All right, I hope that you enjoyed doing your web quest about your Renaissance instruments and also listening to the Bourrée by Michael Pretorius. Um, I think it's just kind of a fun thing to listen to. I think it's really pleasant. I think it's easier to listen to this kind of music than it is to some of the chant that we used to listen to earlier in the medieval period when we were studying about that. Um, it just it's more familiar to our ears. It's a little bit more pleasant. You can tell it's a little bit more modern. Um, so I hope you were able to easily answer the questions about that. We are now on the page that has the section about madrigals. I'm a big fan of madrigals, not just listening to them, but singing them. They actually are really fun if you're nerdy like I am, I guess. Anyway, let's read together. While a lot of vocal music during the Renaissance was religious in nature, much of the vocal music in the Renaissance was non-religious as well. Madrigals were written for several solo voices, and the lyrics are a short poem, usually about love. Sometimes they're about like Greek mythology. One of them that we're going to look at today is more about that. They use word painting. Remember, Josquin was the expert in word painting, and so a lot of people took his cue there and continued that through the Renaissance. Sometimes they have unusual harmonies compared to the sacred music of the day. Remember, in the secular music, like madrigals, they didn't have to adhere to any of the rules of the church about like how things needed to sound. So people just wrote, kind of what they wanted. Madrigals began to be written in Italy around 1520, and they were popular among the aristocratic class. So if you were a noble or you were like a high class individual, maybe you would have a group of singers come and perform for you these madrigals. That's what they liked. In 1588, when the English defeated the Spanish Armada, a volume of madrigals was translated from Italian into English, and they were published in London. And for the next 30 years, English madrigals were written in abundance. In England, they just loved these. And a lot of these English madrigals have survived and have been recorded over and over and over again. You can find them quite easily. Queen Elizabeth was the reigning monarch, and Shakespeare was writing his plays during this time. So it was just a very popular time to be writing music, to be writing literature, and a lot of it has survived and stayed quite famous and in the mainstream. So the next person we're going to discuss is Thomas Weelkes. We talked a little bit about him way back in our first introduction to the Renaissance. Remember that he was the guy who was kind of drunk a lot of the time and also like used bad language because he worked for the church. A lot of them worked for the church and for like the king's court, just because you couldn't just have like one job and make it as a musician. You needed to have like several little gigs going on, and so he did, and that was normal. And remember that even though he like said a lot of bad stuff and frankly did a lot of bad stuff, not only did people enjoy his music a ton, but they also just thought he was really funny, and so they let him get away with it. It's still a puzzling thing because there were other people during the time period that, like, if they had said or done half the stuff that Thomas Weelkes did, they'd, like, get thrown in jail or worse, but somehow he got away with it. So he was one of the best English madrigal writers, and we're going to be listening to a piece of his called As Vesta Was Descending. It is part of an anthology. An anthology is just a collection of English madrigals called The Triumphs of Oriana. It was written to honor Queen Elizabeth, who was the queen at the time. And so I included the words to it. And so I'm going to read them to you first, and here goes. As Vesta was from Latmus hill descending, she spied a maiden queen, the same, ascending, attended on by all the shepherds swain, to whom Diana's darlings came running down amain, first 2 by 2, then 3 by 3 together. leaving their goddess all alone, hasted thither, and mingling with the shepherds of her train, with mirthful tunes her presence entertain. They sang the shepherds and nymphs of Diana, long live fair Oriana. So I feel like that's not lyrics that we would hear in any songs these days, but when you listen to it, it just sounds really joyful and really fun. And the thing about it that's really cool is you can very clearly hear the word painting. And on your next page, you'll notice that it talks about that. When it says descending, you can hear the voices go doo-doo-doo-doo. And when it says ascending, you can hear the voices go back up. When it talks about running, you can hear exactly what they're talking about. Their voices are doing that. Like the music is written that way on purpose. Another thing that's kind of fun is when it says 2 by 2, you have 2 singers. When it says 3 by 3 together, 3 voices. And then when it says long live fair Oriana, it's the longest note. So this is a great example of that word painting that we talked about before.